Hi, this is Elliot Haspel. Welcome to another edition of Best Practices Weekly. Today we're going to be talking about some creative ways to teach functions and patterns to elementary school students, and specifically through dance, which I think is a fun idea. And this comes from an article in Teaching Children Mathematics, where a bunch of researchers from the University of Toronto and a Toronto elementary school teacher teamed up to try to teach functions and patterns, these early algebra concepts, to first and second grade students using multiple learning modalities. And the one that sort of is the headline here is to do it through dance. Though they didn't get there at first, but what they ended up doing was that they could show that students could actually dance out functions if you think about assigning a different dance move to sort of the variable part of it and then the constant part of it. So in the function y equals 2x plus 1, students might slide to the left for a number of times that's equal to the 2x part, given whatever x is, and then hop once. That's always, that's the constant. So if x is 1, 2 slides, 1 hop. If x is 2, 4 slides, 1 hop. If x is 10, 20 slides, 1 hop. And obviously it doesn't have to be slides and hops, whatever dance moves you wanted to put together, and this would work for any sort of kind of equation. But what's exciting about this, of course, is that it's a really fun way for students to engage with functions, which can be a very foreign concept to them when they're that young. Also, you can have students start to extrapolate, like, what would this dance look like if x was, 15 versus if x was 2, so that they're not just doing a simple what comes next type of thinking. But like I said at the beginning, the authors didn't start here. Because if you just started here and made this your whole lesson, students would not necessarily get the underlying concepts of like what functions are and how they work, and being able to really think about them in a more deep critical thinking way. So they did start to do, however, was to do a couple of pre-lessons first. And so first, students were introduced to the growing geometric patterns. And so this used tiles. And what the authors did was that they put each a set of tiles under cards that read position 1, position 2, etc. So what that would mean is that in the 2x plus 1 example, under the card that read position 1, there might be 2 square tiles put next to each other. 3 square tiles put next to each other. And then for position 2, there would be 5 square tiles put next to each other. And for position 3, there would be 7. And then the nice thing about this is you can again try to avoid the common pitfall that students fall into, which is just thinking, well, we're skip counting by, 3s here, we're skip counting by 2s, so I'm just going to add 2 and that's what we're going to get. But instead, what you can have them do is you can say, alright, like, what's going to be, if we're in position 10, what would this pattern look like? Because this is very visual, students can really start to engage with it in a way that they're going to be able to understand pretty easily. After doing this in a whole group, students were sent back in pairs, and they were able to choose their own patterns, their own functions, and use the tiles to again create their own growing geometric patterns using position cards. An advanced way to do this is you could actually put together a tile formation and then put like a question mark position under it and kind of force students to work backwards and say like, okay, well, if this is the equation and this is the answer, essentially this is the y, then what does the x have to be to get there? So lots of things you can do with this in terms of showing them visually that using the growing geometric patterns. The next thing that they did was they used a fairly traditional function machine lesson. This is something I think a lot of teachers do. You have something that goes, an input, 2 goes in, something happens in the function machine, and, out comes 5 because it went through 2x plus 1 in the machine. But in this case, the modification was they were definitely connecting that to the geometric growing patterns, being able to say essentially the fact that we're putting 2 in and 5 is coming out how does that connect to what we just showed with the positions and the growing patterns of what happened when, x was 1 or x was 2 or x was 3? And to reinforce that connection even more, they intersperse, they do a growing pattern lesson and then a function machine mini lesson and then a growing pattern lesson again when they moved from one-step equations to two-step equations and then go back to the function machines. So this is all about activating multiple learning modalities, giving students lots of chances to make connections that are going to help them build their conceptual understanding of what patterns and functions are. And then, after this was done, they moved into the dance. And so they literally introduced this by having the teacher kind of break out into a slide, slide, hop, and then slide, 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 hop. And essentially students were very confused at first, and then were delighted when they were started to realize what the teacher was doing. One thing that the authors note is that even students who are somewhat low performing or tended to struggle in math really could connect to all of these different kinds of learnings, and especially the dance. They really loved that, especially the younger elementary kids, and it was a way for them to feel comfortable, competent, a way for them to use skills that they might not otherwise get a chance to use. So again, the title of this is Teaching Functions and Patterns Through Dance. In truth, it's teaching functions and patterns through creative use of different learning modalities, but I think the dance one is particularly a rare suggestion, and so I hope that you get a chance to use it. Thanks for watching, and happy teaching.